Rock and Roll Railway. Duncan is a narrow gauge engine who works on Mr. Percival's railway. Duncan is definitely very different from the rest of the narrow gauge team. He's a smaller steam engine with yellow paintwork and a strong Scottish accent. But more technically speaking, Duncan can be seen as rocking and rolling when chuffing down the rails, which upsets the thin controller dearly. Oh, Duncan, why must you rock and roll when coming down the line?
I can't help it, sir. It's all because of my wobbly wheel.
Duncan is always complaining about his front wheel being wobbly, even after it's fixed constantly by Victor. Never mind about your wobbly wheel or lack thereof, Duncan. Your passengers don't like being swayed back and forth while trying to take in all the lovely sights of the Scarlowy Railway.
Well, maybe if I got my wheel fixed, then I wouldn't have to rock and roll.
But Duncan knew he has been rocking and rolling on the rails even before having a wobbly wheel.
Near the first station, Duncan was pleased. Nothing's happened, silly old diesel. Clever me. And he rocked and rolled along the line. Steady, boy, checked his driver. But it was too late. Sleepers and ballast, I'm off. And he was.
Duncan was still talking about rock and roll late in the night with the rest of the narrow gauge engines.
And he never believes me that I have a wobbly wheel. I can't rock and roll without a wobbly wheel.
Duncan, you need to stop feeling so sorry for yourself and just focus on being a really useful engine.
Scarlowy is right, Duncan. When my funnel was broken for a short time, I still tried my hardest to get my work done. But your funnel was replaced. My wobbly wheel is just given a drop of oil or two, and then I'm out of the steam works.
What's all the ruckus? Duncan is rocking and rolling again. Duncan, haven't you learned your lesson already? But Duncan was still persistent that his rock and roll was caused by the wobbly wheel, and he made a promise to himself that he wouldn't try to stop rocking and rolling until Mr. Percival promised that he'd get a new front wheel. He went to sleep that night, happily thinking about his mischievous plan for the next day. But early in the morning the next day, Mr. Percival had Duke meet him at Croven's gate before any of the other engines woke up. Duncan is causing delay and confusion with the passengers by starting up his rock and roll habit once again. I needed to supervise him on his journey today and make sure he doesn't any longer. Yes, sir. But even Duke knew he had a challenge ahead of him.
Duke, what are you doing with my passenger coaches?
Mr. Percival told me to watch you during the day and make sure that you don't rock and roll.
Mr. Percival doesn't trust me? Why, I never. James, you hear this? Mr. Percival doesn't trust me. That's terrible, Duncan. To think your own controller can't trust you to be really useful.
Don't stick your funnel in where it doesn't belong, James. You don't know the whole story.
Never mind, Duke. I see what is happening, and I feel bad for my friend Duncan. I understand his predicament. Good luck, Duncan. Thank you, James. I'm going to need it. Well, Duke, what are you waiting for? Lead the way.
Duke and Duncan had to drop off passengers at Lakeside and waited for others to get on board. However, Duke was nowhere in sight because he was far behind.
Oh, that Duke. Always taking his time. Come on, silly engine. The passengers have places to go.
But then there was trouble. A passenger was late and was running towards the platform.
Don't worry, I'll back up for you.
But when Duncan backed up with the coaches, he hit Duke. The passengers went forward, and Duncan was given an unexpected jolt.
Wearing side rods, Duke.
Oh, sorry, old chap. Didn't know that you were backing up. The passengers didn't know either. They were already upset. They didn't like that Duncan was already rocking and rolling. They were saying how bad a railway this was.
Let's just carry on. We need to make it for last time.
Duncan was rattling down the rails, and all of the passengers were grumbling.
Stop grumbling. We'll get where we need to get soon enough.
Duncan, stop rocking and rolling. You're upsetting the passengers. Duncan had had enough of Duke and his rules.
Fine, Duke. If you think you know how to handle the passengers, take them yourself.
Duncan, get back here. But Duncan was already far away from the coaches. Duncan was happy that he didn't have to deal with the grumbling passengers anymore, and that he could rock and roll as he pleased.
No Duke, no Mr. Percival, no grumpy passengers, just me and my wobbly wheel.
Duncan was approaching a tunnel on his way to Renee's station. He rocked and rolled right in, but didn't come out on the other side. When Rusty and his driver got the call that Duncan was in trouble, he knew exactly what had happened.
Stuck in a tunnel again, Duncan?
And he was.
It's all because of my...
No, Duncan, it's not because of your wheel. It's because you rocked and rolled and left your passengers behind. Thankfully so, Duke was able to bring them home. And as for you, I'm very disappointed that you were so selfish and only worried about yourself and not your passengers. Duncan said nothing. Now, Rusty, you know what to do. Let's get Duncan out of this tunnel. Rusty was able to free Duncan from the tunnel. Very good work, Rusty. Now let's proceed. Sir, do my old eyes deceive me, or is that? I say, I do see it as well. Right outside the tunnel was Duncan's wobbly wheel.
I told you, sir, I did have a wobbly wheel.
Well, this isn't a good situation. Rusty, may you please take Duncan to the steamworks? Now, Mr. Percival was the one to feel embarrassed.
Finally, a new wheel. Thank you, Victor.
You're very welcome, my friend. Sorry we never believed you. Now, Duncan would never let it go that he was right and everyone else was wrong.
Now, don't you feel so silly, sir?
But Mr. Percival had one more trick up his sleeve. Just because you were right about your wheel, Duncan, doesn't mean you were right to abandon your passengers. That is quite right, sir. Duncan knew Mr. Percival and Duke were right, but didn't want to admit it, so he just chuffed out of the steamworks with a scowl. But at least he wasn't rocking and rolling. The end.